All right, welcome to this fine day, this wedding feast, as it were. We know that marriage was provided by Jehovah God. It was designed to help this human family be happy and have lasting love. Wedlock was one of the provisions that Jehovah provided for his earthly subjects. If we turn to Genesis chapter 1, we can see how important this really was, how Jehovah viewed it. In verse 28 of chapter 1, here it says, "Further God blessed them, and God said to them, Be fruitful and become many, fill the earth, and subdue it. Have in subjection the fish of the sea, the flying creatures of the heavens, and every living creature that is moving on the earth." And also in chapter 2, verse 18, we saw what else he noticed. In verse 18 of chapter 2, "Then Jehovah God said, It is not good for man to continue to be alone. I'm going to make a helper for him as a complement of him." So although Adam was perfect, Jehovah knew that if Adam was going to continue to be happy and to thrive and actually fulfill his purpose, he was going to need a helper, a complement to fill the earth and subdue it. Now, if we look at the chapter 2 again, in verse 21 and 22, we see the actual provision for this marriage arrangement. In verse 21, "So Jehovah God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep, and while he was sleeping, he took one of his ribs and then closed up the flesh over his place. And Jehovah God built that rib that he had taken from the man into a woman, and he brought her to the man." Here we have the first wedding, the first couple being brought together. It was a provision of a union. What kind of union was that? Well, in verse 24, it really highlights it well for us. We just meditate on it a moment. In verse 24, it says, "That is why a man will leave his father and his mother, and he will stick to his wife, and they will become one flesh." Now, this is not a science project. They're going to be one human body. They're going to be in us, a unit, not a me. They're going to have to think two. And since this was a provision of a union, it's a permanent union. It's to last forever. And since Jehovah is the God of love, a happy God, an honorable marriage actually should reflect those qualities. So how can we make this marriage last in today's world of love and happiness? Well, for a Christian marriage to last, God must be first in your lives. His advice, his discipline from his word must guide both of your decisions. Both men should listen to him. In Matthew chapter 22, we can see a fine example of why we need to think the way Jehovah thinks. Here in chapter 22, in verse 36, Jesus was asked a question. They were asked, and here it is, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" He said to him, "You must love Jehovah your God with your whole heart, and with your whole soul, and with your whole mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. But the second, like it, is you must love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments, the whole law hangs, and the prophets." We understand that love is this commandment, and we also need to love our neighbor. We view it in a different sense. We need to view it personally. In fact, if we turn to the book of Romans, it helps us to appreciate how important this law is. In chapter 13, we look at verse 8 through 10. Here it helps us to appreciate this love. "Do not owe anything to anyone except to love one another. For whoever loves his fellow man has fulfilled the law. For the law code, you must not commit adultery, you must not murder, you must not steal, you must not covet, and whatever other commandment there is summed up in this saying, you must love your neighbor as yourself. Love does not work evil to one's neighbor. Therefore, love is the law's fulfillment." So we can see how important Jehovah made this love in our marriage arrangement. And marriage is a twofold cord where we are bound together. And it's very strong. The mates are united, they mutually support each other. Also in their worship of Jehovah, it becomes a true bond of love. Now, in Ecclesiastes, we see wisdom from a very wise king. King Solomon noted something in his time about this arrangement. Let's turn to Psalms if you have your Bible. Ecclesiastes chapter 4. It's brand new for me. Ecclesiastes, come back. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, and we look at verse 9. Here King Solomon pointed out that two are better than one because they have a good reward for their hard work. For if one of them falls, the other partner can help his partner up. Or what will happen if the one who falls has no one to help him up? Moreover, if two lie down together, they will certainly stay warm. But how can just one keep warm? And someone may overpower one alone, but two together can keep a stand against him. And a threefold cord cannot quickly be torn apart. Now, this bond can be very close, but love for Jehovah God can strengthen this marriage as if he were glue or the adhesive to keep it bond together. In Psalms 103, we can see the wisdom that Jehovah has far beyond our reach. In Psalms 103, 14. Psalms 103:14, for he well knows how we are formed, remembering that we are dust. So Jehovah God knows everything about us, doesn't he? So his advice is truly the one we can trust. He gives it to us here in his word. He knows our physical makeup, but he knows our emotional makeup quite well, doesn't he? And he knows it better than any marriage counselor in this system will ever know. So by studying the Bible, by praying, and by working things together, it will draw you closer to each other. And without a doubt, draw you very close to Jehovah. Now, a husband has a very important role. And if he wants to gain respect, he must follow Jehovah's guidelines. A man is appointed as the loving head of a family. This headship includes having sound judgment based on reasoning from Jehovah and taking the lead in a loving, kind way. Now, the Bible also tells us the man was created with these attributes that would actually make him successful in this role as family head. As such, the man will be responsible before Jehovah for the well-being of his wife and his children. He'd also have to make balanced decisions that would reflect Jehovah's will and would be a sign of good conduct, godly conduct. This, of course, includes supplying the material needs of the family, the spiritual needs of the family, and the emotional needs, but not to be overlooked. The recreational needs of the family need to be taken care of. The wise husband learns how to exercise his headship by imitation of Jesus Christ, his own head. Taking the lead in worship is truly vital if we're going to balance our Christian life. And it's overlooked by so many in the world today. It's truly a challenge. But the husband, if he's to follow Christ's example, we can see that that will always work for him. Now, in the book of Matthew, chapter 11, verse 28 through 30, we see that Jesus was loving and compassionate, especially toward the downtrodden. He said in part, "Come to me, all you who are loaded down, and I will refresh you." He said, "Take my yoke and learn from me. I am mild-tempered, lowly in heart. I will give you refreshment for your soul. My yoke is kindly. My load is light." So truly we can see the example that Jesus gives us as the male species, the husbands in the family unit. It's a delight to be in Jesus' company. We too want to have that. We want to be a delight in our family's arrangement. The Christian headship does not permit a man to be a harsh tyrant, wrongly using his headship as a club, as it were, to browbeat his wife. Rather, he loves and honors his wife. The husband who desires a happy family life does well to consider these fine traits of Jesus. We think of Jesus being lowly in heart, then the husband has even more reason to think so because he's going to make mistakes, unlike Jesus. So when he does make a mistake, he wants his wife's understanding. Therefore, a good husband will admit his mistake even though it might be a little difficult at first because it might sting, but he will always be humble in his attitude. A wife will then find it much easier to respect the husband, because she will see a modest and humble man as opposed to a hot, proud one, a very stubborn man. In turn, the respectful wife will always apologize when she is wrong. Now, God created that woman with fine attributes that she can use in contributing to the happy family life. Many women tend to have a greater compassion and sensitivity, qualities that are needed for caring for the family and in nurturing these human relationships. Usually the woman is quite adept at making a home a very pleasant place to live. In fact, in Proverbs chapter 31, a capable wife is described with all these wonderful qualities and excellent talents. We can see that she was truly going to benefit her family. When we see why would that happen? Well, we can see from a few verses there in Proverbs chapter 31 how this wife can be so exciting and so wonderful for family. In Proverbs chapter 31. Proverbs chapter 31 and verse 10 and 11. Who can find a capable wife? Her value is far more than that of corals. Her husband trusts her from his heart, and he lacks nothing of value. Because the husband uses his heart to trust in her, then we see that the family unit is strong. He is following Jehovah's guidelines. Now we know that Jesus unselfishly put himself far before others. In Romans chapter 15, we can see how important this is for us to remember. In chapter 15 of Romans, we'll look at verses 1 through 3. Here in verse 1 it says, "We, though, who are strong, ought to bear the weaknesses of those not strong, and not to be pleasing ourselves. Let each of us please his neighbor for his good, to build him up. For even the Christ did not please himself, but just as it is written, the reproaches of those reproaching you have fallen upon me." Jesus was willing to give his life for the congregation or his bride. So we can see his mild-temperedness, his source of refreshment, was truly an encouragement to all around him. A Christian husband needs to love his wife as his own body. He needs to cherish her just as he would his own body. He would always fulfill the needs. He would never be brutal or hate his own body. A husband never needs to be violent and angry with his wife in word or action. He would never downgrade her, because a wife who is dearly loved is shown respect and honor. The Bible actually shows the wife's role in marriage is to be honorable and dignified. It's a command from the Bible. We find that in 1 Peter chapter 3. 1 Peter chapter 3. Let's look at verse 7. Here it says, "You husbands, in the same way, continue dwelling with them according to knowledge. Assign them honor as to the weaker vessel, the feminine one, since they are also heirs with you of the undeserved favor of life, in order for your prayers not to be hindered." So we can see how important Jehovah values the honor we show our wives. A Christian husband is told to assign this respect and devotion to her. As a compliment, a wife is not a slave. She's not inferior as a person. Her recognition of the headship, then, this whole principle promotes success in that marriage and true happiness. Now, in the book of Ephesians, we see a lot of good advice for our families. In chapter 5, in the book of Ephesians, verse 22 through 24, it helps us to appreciate the important facets of the relationships in the family. Chapter 5 in the book of Ephesians, and let's look at verse 22 through 24. Here it says, "Let wives be in subjection to their husbands, as to the Lord. Because the husband is head of his wife, just as Christ is the head of the congregation, he being a savior of this body. In fact, the congregation is in subjection to the Christ. Wives should also to be to their husbands in everything." So we can see how important this relationship is between the husband and wife. If we recall, Jehovah God said, "It is not good for man to be by himself. I'm going to make a helper for him." So God created Eve, the first woman, as a complement, not as a competitor. We think just a brief moment about a ship sailing in the sea. If it had two captains, it would not be quite seaworthy because there would be two different directions this boat would try to take. So we can see how important it is that we complement each other in our life as a Christian. The husband must be willing to exercise this loving headship, and the wife is to manifest this love and respect, a willingness to be submissive. We see that a good wife is more than just being obedient. She tries to be a real helper, being supportive of her husband in every decision he makes. Of course, that is much easier when she agrees with his decisions. But even when she does not, her active support can help his decision to have a more successful outcome. Now, a wife can help her husband to be a good head in many ways. She can express appreciation for his efforts to take the lead, instead of criticizing him or making him feel that maybe she can never be satisfied by his decisions. In dealing with her husband in a positive way, she should remember that a quiet and a mild spirit is of great value in the eyes of Jehovah, not just in the eyes of her husband. That's highlighted for us in the scriptures at 1 Peter chapter 3, in verse 3 and 4. Here it says, "Do not let your adornment be external, the braid of hair and the wearing of gold and ornaments or fine clothing, but let it be the secret person of the heart and the incorruptible adornment of the quiet and mild spirit, which is of great value in the eyes of God." And in Colossians chapter 3, we see another fine example of this. Colossians chapter 3, verse 12 helps us to appreciate, excuse me, "Accordingly, as God's chosen ones, holy in love, clothe yourselves with the tender affections of compassion, kindness, humility, mildness, and patience." All these attributes are to help us in our marriage, to help us love one another. Relative subjection is a divine commandment, so it's designed to be good for humans. Without leadership, we can see the result can be nothing but conflict, confusion, and truly unhappiness. A wife's deep respect for her husband is shown when she cooperates with him, not competes with him. That's highlighted at Ephesians chapter 5, verse 33. Once again, showing that Ephesians is a very good book for the family unit to discuss and go over and be reminded of. When he makes a mistake, she will not belittle him, but be understanding. As a helper, the Christian wife is to work with the husband. She can contribute much to make the home pleasant and happy. When she looks to the husband for decisions and works to make them succeed, we can see it's truly a happy marriage. But what's very essential in this marriage arrangement, a very important factor, is communication. We know that we need to cultivate this love in our marriage. It just doesn't happen because we fell in love. We have to work hard throughout our life, through our marriage arrangement, to keep this open, this communication open. The Bible counsels us at Colossians chapter 4, verse 6, they really need to be applied in this marriage arrangement. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt. So we can see our speech with our marriage mate needs to be in good taste. It needs to be sweet and pleasant. We want to be able to hear it and enjoy it. At Colossians chapter 3, verse 12, let's look at that once again. Colossians chapter 3. We look at verse 12 through 14. We'll go over 12 again as a reminder. "Accordingly, as God's chosen ones, holy in love, clothe yourselves with the tender affections of compassion, kindness, humility, mildness, and patience. Continue putting up with one another and freely forgiving one another, even if anyone has a cause for complaint against another. Just as Jehovah freely forgave you, you must also do the same. But besides all these things, clothe yourselves with love, for it is a perfect bond of union." So we can see this love is truly the important facet in our marriage arrangement. Both mates need to clothe themselves in this love, as if it were a clothing. We think about clothing, it protects the body. So we can see love safeguards our marital unity. Clothing can also enhance the beauty of the wearer. even as love can add a luster to God's marvelous provision for marriage. We want to look for ways to show love to our mate each and every day. Set aside time to speak with one another, discuss things with one another, really listen, not just hear, but listen and meditate on what the conversation is. Make it a habit to show kindness in little things, just as by tender words and acts of kindness, affection. Doing so will strengthen the marriage. It will become tighter and stronger. Let's look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13, very important for us in our marriage relationship. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And let's begin at verse 4. It says here, it describes our love. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous. It's not brag. It does not get puffed up. It does not behave indecently. It does not look for its own interest. It does not become revoked. It does not keep account of the injury. It does not rejoice over unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth. It bears all things. It believes all things. Hopes all things. Endures all things. Love never fails. So we can see a good marriage is a result of hard work. The marriage arrangement is so important that we know that Jehovah God counsels us each and every day. His thinking is right here in our Bible, so we need to look at it daily. Base our relationship on the principle of love and respect that Jehovah teaches us. Then we can truly be confident in our marriage that it will last and it truly will be happy. You will honor each other. But more important, you will honor the originator of this marriage arrangement, Jehovah God. Now, as we look at our arrangement in a different sense here, since we are now in the country of Mexico where it has to be done a little bit different, I'm going to ask you, Angel, and the answer is I have. It's in past tense because you're legally married by the government. Have you, Angel Nieto, in the presence of Jehovah God and these witnesses, taken Lynn Salt to be your wedded wife, to love and to cherish, in accordance with the divine law as outlined in the Holy Scriptures for Christian husbands, for as long as you both live?
My God.
Okay. And as the bride, have you, Lynn Salt, in the presence of Jehovah God and these witnesses, taken Angel Nieto to be your wedded husband, to love and to cherish and deeply respect, in accordance with the divine law as outlined in the Holy Scriptures for Christian wives, for as long as you both may live? Okay, now we've come to the vows. We will.
Yeah.
Yes, let's stand for that. I suppose this would be very appropriate. Something I didn't put in my notes. Okay.
Or there is zero, please. When we get to that.
Okay. Come in and get those.
So many people.
Okay, we'll start with the groom. Now we'll try to talk slowly so you can hear what I'm saying. I, Angel Nieto, have taken you, Lynn Salt, to be my wedded wife.
I have Angel Nieto.
Fewer words.
Yeah.
Okay.
I, Angel Nieto, have taken you, Lynn Salt, to be my wedded wife.
I, Angel Nieto, have taking you, Lynn Salt, to be my wife.
To love and to cherish in accordance with the divine law as set forth in the Holy Scriptures.
That's a lot of
Okay,
words.
fine. I'll try to, I'll break it down.
Slower.
To love and to cherish in accordance with the divine law.
To love, to cherish,
In accordance with the divine law. Okay.
in accordance
With the divine law.
with the divine law. Thank you.
We'll break it up small. As set forth in the Holy Scriptures
As set forth in the Holy Scriptures
for Christian husbands,
for Christian husbands,
for as long as we both shall live together on earth,
for as long as we shall live together on earth,
according to God's marital arrangement.
according to God's marital arrangement.
Very good. Okay. The bride, I, Lynn Salt, have taken you, Angel Nieto to be my wedded husband,
I consent to the Angel Nieto to be my wedded husband,
to love and to cherish and deeply respect,
to love and to cherish and to deeply respect,
in accordance with the divine law set forth in the Holy Scriptures for Christian wives,
what were the first words?
in accordance with the divine
Okay.
law set forth in the Holy Scriptures,
In accordance with the divine law as set forth in the Holy Scriptures,
for as long as you both shall live together on earth according to God's marriage arrangement.
for as long as we both shall live together on earth according to God's marriage arrangement.
Okay, so if we are now going to exchange rings,
The little box.
I should have run my phone.
It's right, I forgot.
Yeah.
I'm to put on the flag, no
That's
white.
right.
Yes.
So I'll ask the groom if he will place the ring on your bride's finger. Okay, and then as the bride, you may place the ring on his finger. As we see, these rings are an outward and visible sign signifying unto all the uniting of this man and woman in the bonds of matrimony. As Angel Nieto and Lynn Selk have covenanted before Jehovah God and these witnesses to accept each other in wedlock, what God has yoked together, let no man put apart. Let's now approach Jehovah.